So welcome to this episode of Crap No One Tells You. With me today is Mr. M from Action Karate in Chalfont, and he is going to tell us about some of the crap no one tells you about running a martial arts studio. So welcome.
Thanks for having me on there, sir. Appreciate it. So for those who are listening, they call me Mr. M because, various instructors, I was given that name at a very young age. My father and my mother got me into martial arts when I was 3 at Action Karate in Ben Salem, which no longer exists. It's actually now Feasterville.
Okay.
I got into it for self-control issues and discipline, everything a kid would need. I was a very wild kid. I wanted to be a ninja. I wanted to be...
every kid's dream, right?
Yes. I wanted to be a ninja. But so I loved it. And I think I was probably around like 7 or so doing some leadership, like basic SWAT team stuff, where I'm being a leader for the kids in class. And I was given the name Mr. M. My father was Mr. McCurry, which is my last name. So then I became the shortened version.
Mr. M. Okay. So Mr. McCurry is your dad, and you're just Mr. M.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
So what is some crap no one tells you about actually running a martial arts studio?
It's funny. I've been in my whole life, and there was a period of time where I was told at 16, you're going to run a karate school. And my response to it with my normal teenage angst and wanting to do what I wanted to do was, maybe, like, let me explore the world a little bit. So I wouldn't say I took a break. I was still training, but I explored other avenues. And by the time I had gotten back, I was in my mid-20s, early 20s. I was miserable at all those other jobs I did. Everything from, detailing cars to washing windows to landscaping to, you name the labor, I did it. I think the last job I ended up at was like a warehouse, like packing. And I loved the people. Hated
Hated the work?
Just the work was just so tedious. And
the
repetitiveness. And there was if there was people that I loved, I would have been like out sooner. But anyway, so I got a call that, hey, we have a head instructor job. You can run a karate school. Do you want it? I'm like, great, awesome. I'm crying at work every day. Like let's do something. So what I didn't realize, I thought, all right, I'm going to put my uniform on. I've done this for my whole life. This is going to be simple. Like, no, not quite. So I think the first thing that popped in my head when I was thinking about this question was like, all right, so what do they don't tell you? Well, they don't tell you that it's more than just kicking and punching.
Correct. Because you're now doing that and running a business, right?
Correct. And, I think the big part in the beginning when I started at Action Jamison under Sensei Michael. And he did most of the business aspect in the beginning. I was just doing more like, all right, becoming the presence of the floor and becoming the presence of those students. I came into a school of 300, I guess it was probably 250 at that time.
Okay.
So 250 students and families that I need to get to know and kind of create relationships with. So there was a lot of business was on his end, and then as the time goes on, he was just kind of shuffling more stuff to my plate. But I came in thinking, all right, I'm going to teach them kicks and punches, some self-defense and katas, and and have fun. And that all was part of it.
Right.
What they don't tell you is you build these relationships with these kids and these families, and then life shows up, and sometimes they decide, I'm going to move on to soccer, I'm going to move on to baseball. And then I think over time I just got this, like, I would get so ingrained in someone's life and helping them, and then it's all of a sudden it's like they're off. They're firing me.
So were you working mostly with kids at the time?
I was. So I was very concerned. I worked with adults. So I worked with, I was in my mid-20s, I was training people that were in their 50s and 60s.
Okay.
And the same result was there. It was different excuses, but, things pop up and people want to move on, or people are emotional.
Yes.
Like, humans are emotional, and we emotionally respond in various different ways. And I know that, if I'm talking with my wife and she says something, it can tug at my emotional heartstrings, and then I could respond in a way I probably shouldn't. So then, it's like, what I've learned is that taking a step back, taking a couple of deep breaths, and like letting the process go through before you make a decision. But I see it, I see these emotional decisions happen. I try to guide them, and I challenge is I can't guide everyone else where I want them to be.
So one of the interesting things is what you're saying is we have the kicks and punches. Then you have this side of it, right? And I think this is what a lot of people don't understand with martial arts in general is, yes, there's kicks and punches. Then there's the whole mental side of it, right? The sport itself, but also the group of people you do this with. Because most people that get into martial arts do it for somewhat of an extended period of time once they get into it. So like you become like family with some of your fellow practitioners, right?
Yes, sir.
And you build deep relationships with your instructors. Like you get to know them. I remember, I mean, I've been doing martial arts since I was like, 15? And I've gone through the gambit. I did, judo, Muay Thai, taekwondo. And it was funny because every place that I went to had a slightly different atmosphere. Like when I did judo, I was doing it with Olympic medalist winners, highly competitive. My trainer was also the trainer for the police department.
Wow.
So it was hardcore. It wasn't all, hugs and kisses and, everybody. It was like, for some of these guys, it was work,
Yes.
right?
Yes, sir.
Then when I did the Muay Thai, I ended up with a unit that was doing it competitively. So once again, yes, it was a lot of fun. Yes, there was a lot of that stuff. But there was always that underlying of, but I'm going to compete, right? So the work ethic was, we were there 6-7 days a week, 2 to 3 hours a day at a minimum. We would go right from work and get home in time to go to bed, right? Other than that, we were at the gym.
Yes.
And then the last place I went to, as I got a little older, was the taekwondo place. Totally different. That was run by an instructor. It was very family oriented. It was, they did a lot of Tai Chi and stuff like that as well. And that place really became, when I moved and I could no longer go there, that was the only thing I missed from that place was my martial arts studio. Because it was just, I would go 3 times a week and that was my relaxation. That was where my head got screwed back on straight, so to speak. Yes. So I think it's super important, and it's no secret my daughter goes to your school.
Yes.
And one of the things that I noticed when I went there was not just the form and doing the sport, but the other stuff that you guys do. And she had a moment the other day. She had just had a meltdown over something. I forget what it was, and turned into this big thing. And so we go to class, and you guys were teaching, I want to say, self-control that day. So we go out of the class, and we get in the car, and she goes, "How does Mr. M always know?" And I'm like, "How does he know what? What I'm having problems with."
That's so cute.
And I just started laughing, and I'm like, well, maybe other kids are having the same thing. So, he covers all of it. But how much of the focus of what you guys do is actually around that aspect, not just the punching, kicking, the sport part of it?
I think there's an even keel. I mean, I like to use the reference when I'm training a child, I'm training for them for their black belt, not anyone else's. I had a student years ago. I think he got pretty close to his senior black belt, but I mean, you could count on 2 hands how many challenges this boy had as far as physical and mental as well. Not for the lack of trying. He was a super positive kid. He just got dealt that hand. And mom and dad were like, he's never going to be a black belt. We understand that. We want him to be here to build his muscle strength and to get, the mental aspect of it. And I said, no, he'll be a black belt. And they're like, what? Because in their mind, they built this story of what a black belt is. And you see movies, you see maybe your experiences of seeing other karate schools, competitive karate schools, and you think there's no way my child can do that. And I said, no, he's going to be his black belt. It's his black belt. It's his best, not Johnny over there's best. Johnny over there, because we have people that compete nationally in the organization, And then we have, kids that are just trying to learn the basic focus and discipline
Right.
to become their best selves. So I think Action Karate as an organization is more concerned. I mean, definitely the karate aspect, because the kids love going because of karate. Kids wouldn't want to continue to go unless there was actually hitting bags and hitting targets and learning cool things. But I think the big more percentage of it is them learning the mental qualities they need to, the discipline, the control, and the stories that we tell help guide them in that direction. But I find it funny, like there's a couple of kids that earn their junior black belts that literally said their favorite thing about class is the lessons of the week.
Yeah.
They love to hear the stories.
The stories and the...
Because they can relate to it. But yeah, I think 90% of it is really that.
So do you think people generally understand that there's a huge difference between schools? There's a huge difference between where you take a child, for example, for their lessons? Because I think that's something that's overlooked in general, because people have that, oh, this is what the art is, right? Like this is what karate is. Oh no, it's way more than that, right?
Correct. And I think it depends on what you want. So it depends on what you're looking for. So I mean, I think every parent is looking for their child to have better focus, better discipline, better control. How they get to that point, I think, is how the story they tell themselves in their minds. All right, so I'm willing to spend this much money to get my child this experience. And if you look at it from a money aspect, you're probably going to be let down, right? Because if you're looking at it just to save $1, it's going to be hard for you to get that same experience that you want in your mind. But if you're looking to invest in your child's future, you have to look at the school that's going to do that, or is dedicated and willing to do anything.
So if I was taken, and I had an unfair advantage because I had been doing this for a while, and I kind of understood what I was looking for. If, let's say, someone's listening right now and they have a kid and they're like, I want them to do some kind of martial art because I think it'll be good for them both physically and mentally. How should a parent go about evaluating a school, right? Because you can go, we both know the guy up here on the corner, UFC fighter, right? Not a place I would take my kid, just, between you and I, because totally different training of mentality, right?
Yes,
but so how should a parent kind of go into a school and kind of figure out, okay, this could be the right fit for my kid or not?
Yeah. So I think, that's why we always have like trials at schools, at least for our schools. And I know most schools that we're either associated with or connected with, or at least have an understanding from a distance, that like most schools have a trial error. So they have a week or two or a month or whatever it may be. And I think you figure out very quickly what school is going to fit for you. So for instance, if we talk about MAT vision in our school with our leadership members, with our employees, anyone down to the 8-year-old, right? That's being a role model in class. They're all aware that, all right, if someone walks in and they're doing this, looking around, they're very confused, child looks a little nervous, they're probably brand new, right? And I think the first instance is, are they feeling welcome? So you walk in, head instructor, the enrollment director walks right up and says, hey, my name is Mr. M, how are you? And they can, that's the first thing. It's like, all right, are they getting an introduction, or are they sitting there for about 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and no one's saying anything to them?
Right.
So I think the first thing is like the welcome, right? Are they feeling welcome when they walk in? I think the second thing is your school clean? So we talk about white glove clean.
Right.
And there's various days where, kids are putting fingerprints everywhere. And so I think you have to be aware of the cleanliness of your school. But more importantly, I think it's I think this like 90% of it, the connection between instructor to that student. So, for me, if I'm meeting a student for the first time, I get on their level. So I squat down with them. I ask them what their name is. If they're super nervous, I might eye up to the parent to see if I can get the name out. Once I get the name, I can slowly start to hopefully take some of those nervous bricks down. Right. Slowly but surely. And usually it's by, from a distance. I keep my distance purposely. I put a high five out very distantly. And hopefully if I can get the high five, I can start to build up that. And if I get nothing, that's normal too. I just say to the parent, hey,
next class.
He's going to gain that confidence.
Right.
You might see over the next several weeks that he might either not get in class or slowly gets on the mat. But I think that the big thing is that a parent should choose based on the people and the instructor there, right?
Okay.
I really think it's is the instructor number one who you'd want your child to be like, right? Are they confident? Are they focused? Are they caring, right? But also, does your child connect with that instructor, right? If your child can't connect with the instructor, and it depends on the child's needs, right? So sometimes the child's needs is they don't connect with anybody. So it's like, all right, we'll give it some time. Maybe that instructor can take those bricks down.
Right.
But mostly it's got to be, can they connect with that person?
Okay. And people shouldn't be afraid. Like if that doesn't work, don't give up on the art.
Correct.
Right? Just try. Not every teacher is for every student, right?
Yes,
and
sir.
that's one of the things you learn, well, in life in general, right? But yeah, try a second school. If the first one doesn't work, or try a different art form. Go from karate to taekwondo, right? Go from taekwondo to ninjutsu. Like, I don't really care what the art form is, especially during those younger years. And I'm seeing it with my own daughter going to your guys' school, is the mental development of going there far exceeds whatever longing I have for her to be able to punch and kick.
Yes, sir.
Right? And it was funny because you were talking about this making a connection and all that stuff. And I think it was her second class. We went there, and then because she's done a bunch of other stuff. She's done gymnastics and soccer and a bunch of things. And one of the things you guys do that I kind of didn't realize how much meant to the kids until it happened to her was you guys do this little thing at the end where you sit around and you talk and, everybody high fives, and then you tell the other kids, let's welcome them to the team. We walked out of that class and we weren't even out the door when she looks at me and goes, I'm part of the team. I'm part of the team now. Because no other sport she's gone to is that recognized right off the bat, right? Like everywhere else, you have to earn your way to the team or become part of the team. I think martial arts in general is unique in that way, is that, no, we don't care what level we want you to be part of this team, right? Whatever this team is, we want you to be a part of it. And you don't have to prove yourself, because one of the things you learn through martial arts is the difference between a white belt and a black belt, as far as skill level goes, is time.
Correct.
Right? That's 90% of it is show up, do the work, and you will go from here to here, right? And I think, once again, with martial arts, it's such a unique approach to life, is because you never look at something and go, oh, I can't do that, right? Because once you've earned your third belt, fourth belt, fifth, whatever it is, you go, oh, so if I just put a little bit of time and effort into it, I can get from here to here.
Yes.
Just like I did with the martial arts, right? And then because most classes are somewhat mixed, you have, black belts intertwined with people that are just starting. And there's never that looking down on anyone. It's always the, how can I help you?
Correct.
Which is also very unique to this sport, I think, right? I think the only other sport that I can think of that's similar, actually, never mind. Can't think of any other sport that's similar in that.
I think as well.
Where literally the top level almost adopts the beginners, right? Because, I don't know, it's a unique... So what about the business side of things?
The business side. It's probably, I would say, as of right now, depending on what side of it you look at, is probably not my favorite.
Okay.
No, here's what I like. As far as the business side, I like opening opportunities for people to be part of the organization.
Okay.
I want to say the word raising, but it's not really raising. Grooming those that want to be more than that later on in life. Maybe they're super young. We have one instructor right now that's expressed that he wants to possibly open up a karate school one day. And he's a very young kid, not even finished high school yet, but slowly grooming and helping him along that path to hopefully get him to accomplish that goal. So I love that aspect of trying to inspire, help, and guide and mentor. And and the marketing can be very tedious, right? But like it's part of anything,
Right.
right? So the handing out flyers or the setting up programs or for any of that kind of stuff can be, and I think it's definitely ego on my end because I don't always believe in myself in that way.
Okay.
Which is fine, right? It's just a matter of doing it so that you do.
Correct. You still have to do it.
Yes. And I think like Action Karate is always coming up with different ways to help other people. And I think, yes, we're doing ways to market the business and bring more business in. But really the mindset is, if you listen to if you were to be a fly on the wall in any of our business meeting, it's literally, how can we help more people? And I think
so the vision behind the school is what I would call like a good vision. So it's easy to get people behind it.
correct.
So your messaging is somewhat straightforward too because of that.
Correct. But they don't tell you that, you're going to spend hours on end going house to house, putting a flyer on a door.
Going to community events.
And,
going into schools.
if you have a family or you're trying to build a family, your Saturday night might be sitting in a carnival for a couple hours, or, your Sunday morning might be at a run, stretching out runners. And so some of the business aspect can be consuming of time. I think the other really good thing about Action Karate, depending on where you're at in your business and where it's going. So if you're just starting your business out, you're working 80 hours a day, 80 hours a week, 80 hours a week.
Yes.
Maybe 100, depending on how much you're trying to hustle and bustle.
Right.
However, in a 6-month period, you could have people doing those things and you're training them to do them.
Right, if you're willing to put in the work early.
Willing to put in the work.
But you are literally doing all the business stuff, all the marketing stuff, and then you're going back and you might be teaching 2 or 3 hours a day, and then you're doing 7 to 10 hours of outreach and trying to build it.
Correct. Literally to the point where you have like a book in front of you with hundreds of leads from various years of going to events, and maybe some didn't answer, but maybe they'll answer a year later. And it's, all right, there's your book, set up a lesson. You can't leave till you set up a lesson. It's like you can't leave till you accomplish something. And look, be honest, there's definitely days where I leave and I'm defeated and don't accomplish something.
Right.
And then there's been days where I have. And then there's been great days where it's like 3 things get accomplished. Great thing is I have a team. I have my sister who's my partner. I have Miss Sue who's also my other partner. We're all the full-time people, and then various other people that do stuff. But it's literally like, all right, cold call them, or, call these businesses and try to partner with them, or whatever you can do to kind of basically spread the word or get people involved.
And you guys are kind of in a unique situation because, I know in our area you could almost throw a rock between martial arts schools.
Yes, sir.
Right? Like, that's no joke. I think I drive by like 3 or 4 of them on my whole 12-minute commute home.
Yes, sir.
But you guys are only pulling from a certain mile radius from your school. Like, people don't travel 30 miles unless you're like going to a Gracie type jiu-jitsu school or something specific.
Correct.
But people don't drive 30 miles to go to a martial arts schools. Like, it has to be within reason.
If you're driving 30 miles to a school, you're driving it to participate in a special event. So, for me, if I'm driving 30 miles, I'm going to spend time with 9th degree black belt Dave Kovar, from California.
Correct.
Like, I'm going to spend time with the guy that was creator of most of our stuff. Like, I'm going to spend my time with him, or, in his grave right now, but Ed Parker, I would go travel 30 miles for him. But I'm not going to go take my kid to a karate school 30 miles from here.
Right. On three days a week or whatever it is.
It could be rough. So yes, opened up. There was a karate school just opened up in New Britain, where we were actually at several years ago. So yeah, like, you could throw a rock and hit a karate school in any direction. And I think that's the great thing about that is that there's always going to be students for every school out there, whether you're in the Action Karate organization or not.
Yes.
So you're never going to be loss of students. And every school you go to is going to be a different flavor. It's going to be a different feel. So I think that's the best part, is that, like, you'll figure it out if you really want it.
So basically what I just said earlier on, that martial arts is one of those embracing. You just said, even on the business side, it's no, there's room for more. Like, there's always students.
Correct.
Like, I may not be the right teacher for some student and vice versa. So, like, I want to be able to send you elsewhere, right? If this doesn't work for some reason.
Yes, and I've had students, I've taught students, and I've been able to connect with them, and then all of a sudden something's lost in the mix somewhere, and all of a sudden I find out later down the road they're either at another action karate and they're doing great and they're flawless, and I'm like, wow, that's awesome. Or they're at another karate school,
Right?
and they're doing great, and it's like, cool, like that's great. Like I'm glad you're still doing it.
Right. You're still advanced. Like you're still focused. It's just
Correct.
Yes.
I remember this student, and this kind of goes back to what you were talking about earlier about like what really matters. I had this student, I mean, he was 4 years old and focus needed it, but like he would literally just like spit on the floor. Like it was that bad. And like we'd make him clean it up.
Right.
Like we'd do all that stuff. And now because of, I mean, he's moved on now, but he trained over 8 years. No, over 10 years. Accomplished second degree black belt, and in the process became an Eagle Scout, right? Had a second degree, like total different kid.
Right.
And I think to myself, all right, if I do the business correct, right? If I set up that lesson, or if I set up that program, I can hopefully bring that same experience to one kid, right? It takes one kid, right? You know, not every kid's can have that same experience or have that same difficulty with respect and control, but I might find that one kid that does, and then I can change his life. So
how young can kids generally start martial arts? Like there's got to be a threshold where like they just have to, first of all, be able to physically do it, and secondly, I mean, it does require you mentally to be able to like stand in line. And it's funny because we had a kindergarten teacher on, and a daycare owner on. And she was saying when she talked to kindergarten teachers, they're like, I need you to do like 2 or 3 things. One of it is like stand in line, know how to take turns. And like it was something so basic, right? So at what level could I look at taking a child into martial arts?
I think it varies depending on the child. Like I think it's the rough age we start as 3.
Okay.
Now, depending on what school you go to and when the program begins, we do have like a mommy and me class that starts at like, I think it's 2.
Oh, okay.
And that's, you know, a total different program than the normal class kind of situation. But most kids start at 3 years old, and it depends on where their developmental level is, you know. And even the kids, you'll notice in class when you're watching Gabrielle's class, maybe you haven't seen this, but some kids, I mean, sprinting back and forth. Some instructors have to hold their belt in the back just to keep them in place. But I think that's why parents bring them here. They bring them to learn the skills. So when they get into first grade or they get into kindergarten, they can stand in line, share, and all those things. So 3 years old.
Okay. So anything else you think people should know?
I think other than get your child in a martial arts school, see if they like it. I think so. I think it's, you know, number one, I think it's actually viewed now, I don't want to say scientifically, but there was a study that done the 2 best things you can get your child involved in are martial arts and swimming.
Okay.
I'm not a swimmer. However, it's a hugely healthy thing for your body to do. It's the healthiest workout you can do.
Absolutely.
And then martial arts, because it helps you be better at all the other things you're doing. So not only does it give you the knowledge of kicking and punching, which makes you stronger for sports and better focus for playing instruments, but it also gives you a way of life where you can actually be your best self. So,
and I think people often have a tendency of thinking that it has to be like a daily thing. But like even if you go once a week, like
correct.
Just get started.
It's once a week, and if you go to the right school, it's going to be a flexible schedule for your schedule. And I think it's just so worth it to see where that would go with your child and to help them grow. Especially in this time after being the pandemic, a lot of kids are struggling with, you know, anxiety and depression and all sorts of things. That's the best environment for your child to be in.
We've had multiple guests come on and talk about how that has affected the adults. So like on a child level, I'm imagining it's a little bit worse. I mean, they're adaptive, right? But that's still a toll to take on a child. When you look at what toll it took on adults, right?
Yes, sir. It takes a village, right, to raise a child. It
Yes.
doesn't, you know, it took a village to raise me. It's going to take a village to raise any child.
Just one?
Oh, a couple villages there, sir. But in the process, if you allow people to be part of that process with you and your child, you get a shoulder to lean on when things get tough. So
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
And we look forward to being back with another episode.